The arena of flesh and steel. The air smelled of blood and metal. The arena stretched wide, its towering steel walls trapping the helpless inside. Bright, artificial lights flickered above, casting long shadows over the crimson-stained sand. In the center of the arena, warriors stood, their bodies covered in scars, their eyes cold and merciless. High above them, on a throne made of bones and steel, sat Queen Xyvera, the ruler of Xyvera Prime. Her sharp golden eyes scanned the arena, watching the new recruits as they stepped inside for the first time. Some looked fearless, some looked eager, but most had one thing in common. They had no idea what awaited them. Among the recruits was Kai. He was young but strong, his body hardened by years of survival. Unlike the others, his face did not show excitement or fear. It showed nothing. He had learned long ago that showing emotions was a weakness. A deep voice echoed through the arena. General Voss, a towering warrior with cybernetic arms, stepped forward. His voice boomed across the arena, silencing the whispers of the recruits. "Welcome to the arena of flesh and steel," he announced. "You are no longer citizens, no longer weaklings. You are warriors now, but warriors must prove their strength." A door at the far end of the arena slid open with a loud hiss. From the darkness beyond, they came. The prey. Terrified prisoners were shoved forward, their wrists bound, their faces pale with fear. Some were criminals, some were captured soldiers, some were innocent, caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. But here, none of that mattered. Here, they were nothing more than moving targets. A cruel smile spread across Queen Xyvera's lips as she leaned forward in her throne. She tapped her fingers against the armrest, watching the recruits carefully. "You wish to be warriors," General Voss roared. "Then hunt. Kill. Show no mercy." The arena erupted into chaos. Warriors charged forward, blades flashing, guns firing. The prisoners ran, screaming, some begging for mercy. But mercy did not exist in Xyvera Prime. Blood splattered the sand. The weak fell first, their bodies crushed under the might of those desperate to prove their strength. Kai stood still, watching. He saw a young woman, no older than him, fall to her knees, her hands raised in surrender. A recruit slammed a blade into her chest without hesitation. She gasped, blood spilling from her lips before collapsing. He saw a man try to fight back, using his bare hands. He managed to break a warrior's nose before another recruit shot him in the head. This was not a battle. This was slaughter. Kai clenched his fists. He had expected blood. He had expected death. But something about this felt wrong. Then something happened that no one expected. One of the prisoners, a massive alien with dark blue skin and burning red eyes, refused to die. A warrior lunged at him, but the prisoner moved fast, too fast. He grabbed the warrior's arm and snapped it like a twig. The warrior screamed, dropping his blade. The alien picked it up, turning it against his attacker. The crowd gasped. The warriors hesitated. No one had ever seen a prisoner fight back like this. Up on her throne, Queen Xyvera smiled. Kay's eyes widened as the alien rushed forward, taking down warrior after warrior. His movements were precise, brutal. He wasn't just surviving, he was hunting. The other prisoners took the chance to fight back. They attacked with desperation, grabbing weapons from the fallen, using their fists, their teeth, anything to stay alive. The recruits, unprepared for resistance, began to struggle. The arena had turned into a real battle. Kai moved, his instincts kicking in. A prisoner lunged at him, a rusted dagger in hand. Kai dodged, spun, and struck with precision. His blade pierced the attacker's stomach. The man gasped, his eyes full of pain, before collapsing. Kai's heart pounded. This wasn't the first time he had killed. But this time, it felt different. Across the arena, the massive alien faced off against General Voss. The crowd watched in silence. Voss was a legend, A warrior with hundreds of victories. No one had ever beaten him. The alien charged. Voss sidestepped. But the alien was faster. He grabbed the general's cybernetic arm, twisted it, and ripped it clean off. The crowd gasped. The queen laughed. General Voss roared in pain, stumbling back. The alien prepared to strike the final blow. But before he could, a dozen plasma rifles fired at once. The alien collapsed. Smoke rose from his body, the scent of burned flesh filling the air. His red eyes dimmed, and then he was still. Silence. The battle was over. The prisoners were dead. The arena was painted red. Queen Xyvera rose from her throne, stepping forward. Her golden eyes shined with something close to amusement. "Interesting," she murmured. Her gaze locked onto Kai. He had fought well. He had survived. But had he enjoyed it? She smiled. She would soon find out. The rebel among beasts. The bodies had been cleared from the arena, but the scent of blood still clung to the air. The sand remained stained, dark patches where warriors had ended lives without hesitation. Kai stood among the recruits, his muscles tense, his mind racing. His grip tightened around the hilt of his blade. He could still feel the warmth of the prisoner's blood on his hands. The fight had ended, but something inside him hadn't settled. He looked up at Queen Xyvera, still seated on her high throne, her golden eyes scanning the surviving recruits like a predator studying her prey. But it was him she was watching. Her lips curled into a slight, knowing smile. Why him? The answer came sooner than he expected. A deep voice rumbled behind him. "You. Come with me." Kai turned to see General Voss standing there, his massive frame shadowing the recruits. His cybernetic arm had been repaired, but the burn marks on his shoulder showed where the alien had ripped it from his body. The general's gaze was sharp, unreadable. Kai nodded and followed. They walked through the steel corridors of Zarvuk Prime's fortress, passing rows of weapon racks, warriors sharpening blades, and prisoners being dragged toward the lower chambers. Kai had heard the rumors about what happened in those dark halls. Training for the elite, torture for the weak. Voss finally stopped before a massive door, pressing his palm to a scanner. The door hissed open, revealing a chamber of red light and moving holograms. Inside, Queen Xyvera waited. Kai stepped forward, his heart steady, but his instincts sharp. This was not a casual meeting. The queen stood with her back to him, watching a holographic replay of the battle from the arena. The moment when the alien fought back played in slow motion. The way he moved, dodged, attacked like a true warrior. And then, the moment Kai killed the prisoner. Xyvera turned. "Tell me, warrior, what did you feel when you killed?" Kai hesitated. It was a simple question, but he knew there was a trap hidden inside it. The truth. He felt nothing. But that wasn't what she wanted to hear. "Victory," he said instead. Xyvera's smile widened, but there was something behind her eyes. A flicker of amusement, or perhaps doubt. "Victory," she echoed. "Is that all?" Kai did not answer. He only held her gaze. She stepped closer, circling him like a predator. "You hesitate," she said. "I saw it in the arena. You hesitate, but you survive. That makes you different." Voss, standing at the side, grunted. "If he hesitates, he's weak." Xyvera's gaze snapped toward the general, sharp as a blade. "Weak?" She gestured at the hologram, where the alien broke Voss's arm. "That," she said, "was weak." Voss's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Xyvera turned back to Kai. "You are not weak," she said, almost as if testing the words. "But I wonder, are you loyal?" Kai felt the air shift. This was the real test. Before he could respond, the chamber door slammed open. A warrior stumbled inside, panting, his face pale. "My queen," one of the recruits, he escaped. Xyvera's amusement vanished instantly. "Who?" The warrior hesitated. "Rin." Silence. Kay's breath caught. Rin, the only recruit he had spoken to, the one who had whispered about Xyvera's past. The Queen's expression turned cold, calculating. "General," she said smoothly, "take Kai. Find him. Kill him." They tracked Rin through the fortress corridors, following the signs of his escape: an unconscious guard, a broken security panel, a smear of blood on the walls. He was wounded, but fast. Kai and Voss stepped into a dark passage leading to the lower levels, a place few ever went. The air was damp, filled with the hum of machinery and distant screams. Then, a sound, a breath. Too close. Kai turned just as Rin lunged from the shadows, knife aimed at his throat. Kai dodged, spinning to the side. But he didn't strike back. Voss did. The general moved like a beast, grabbing Rin and slamming him against the wall. Traitor. His metal fist crushed against Rin's ribs. A sharp crack echoed through the chamber. Rin coughed, blood dripping from his lips, but he still managed to laugh. "You think I'm the only one," he choked out. Voss lifted his fist for another strike, but Kai moved without thinking. He stepped between them. Voss froze, his cybernetic fingers inches from Kai's face. Kai met his gaze. "Let me question him first," he said, his voice calm. A dangerous silence followed. Then, finally, Voss lowered his fist. Kai grabbed Rin and dragged him into a side chamber, locking the door behind them. Rin sagged against the wall, breathing hard. He looked up at Kai with a weak grin. "Didn't think you'd actually stop him." Kai crossed his arms. "Talk. Why did you run?" Rin's smile faded. He leaned closer and whispered, "Because Xyvera is lying to all of us." Kai frowned. "About what?" Rin's eyes burned with intensity. "About the real purpose of the arena. About why she trains warriors. About what's coming." Kai's pulse quickened. "What's coming?" Rin's voice dropped lower. "A war, but not the one you think. The Queen's secret past." The chamber was small, dark, and damp. The air smelled of rust and old blood. Kai stood over Rin, who sat slumped against the cold metal wall, his breathing uneven. The dim light flickered, casting shadows across his bruised face. Kai crossed his arms, his gaze sharp. "What do you mean? What war?" Rin wiped the blood from his lip and chuckled. "You think Xyvera trains warriors just for sport?" His voice was rough, strained. "No, Kai. She's preparing for something bigger, something worse." Kai frowned. He had spent years fighting, surviving, but this was different. He had never questioned why the Queen built her empire on bloodshed. But now, doubt was creeping in. "Explain," Kai demanded. Rin's eyes darkened. "You ever wonder why she smiles when warriors die? Why she doesn't just use machines or simulations? Why she makes us kill like animals?" Kai didn't answer. He had wondered. He had seen the pleasure in Xyvera's eyes when the alien almost won, when warriors tore each other apart. Rin leaned in, whispering, "She was one of us once." Kai's eyes narrowed. "Liar." Rin smirked. "Am I?" He took a slow breath. "She wasn't always a queen, Kai. Once she was prey, just like those prisoners in the arena. Just like us." The words hung heavy in the air. Kai's mind raced. If this was true, it changed everything. The past of a monster. Before Kai could speak, the door slammed open. Voss stood there, his expression unreadable. Enough talk. He reached for Rin, but Kai stepped between them again. Voss's eyes flickered with anger. "What are you doing?" Kai squared his shoulders. "I need more answers." Voss grabbed Kai by the collar, lifting him off the ground with one powerful arm. His cybernetic fingers tightened around Kai's throat. "You think the Queen tolerates weakness?" Voss growled. "You think she doesn't see this hesitation?" Kai choked but didn't struggle. He just stared into Voss's eyes. Cold, merciless, but behind them, something else. Something buried deep. Fear. Voss had served Xyvera for years. He had seen her rise to power. He had seen what she was capable of. And now, he was afraid of what Kai might become. Kai didn't blink, then let her deal with me herself. Voss stared for a moment, then threw Kai to the ground. Fine, she will. Rin coughed. Great, now we all die together. Voss turned and marched away. The queen was waiting. The queen's throne. Kai knelt before Queen Xyvera, the room silent except for the hum of ancient machines. The same throne room as before, but the air was heavier. Xyvera stepped forward, her golden eyes studying him like a puzzle she was trying to solve. You question me, she said, not angry, not amused, just observing. Kai didn't respond. You stopped General Voss, she continued. You protected a traitor. You demand answers. Why? Kai met her gaze. Because you're hiding something. Silence. Then, Ira laughed. A sharp, short sound. She turned, walking toward the large window overlooking the arena. You're smarter than I thought, she admitted. Most warriors never even think to ask. She looked over her shoulder. Do you want to know the truth, Kai? Kai hesitated, then nodded. Xyvera raised her hand. The walls shifted, revealing the hidden holographic archive. Flickering images of a younger Xyvera, beaten, bloodied, and chained in a dark pit. A prisoner. A slave. Kay's breath caught. I was born in the pits of Arkal, Xyvera said, her voice calm. But beneath it, something darker. I was raised for one purpose, to die for the amusement of others. Kai watched as the hologram replayed her past. A younger Xyvera, barely more than a child, was thrown into an arena, surrounded by warriors twice her size. She fought, she bled, she lost, and yet, she survived. Every day, she continued, they'd made us fight. Every day, we watched our brothers and sisters die. And then, one day, Kai saw it, the moment she changed. The hologram showed Xyvera's first kill, the way she hesitated, the way she saw no choice, and then the way she learned to love it. I escaped, Xyvera said, turning to face Kai. I built an empire. I trained warriors not to fight for survival, but for something greater. Power, control, fear. She stepped closer, her eyes locking onto his. And you, Kai, what do you fight for? Kai swallowed. His entire world had shifted. Xyvera was not born a queen. She was made into one. You say you fight for power, Kai said slowly. But what do you fear? Xyvera's smile flickered, just for a second. Then suddenly, alarms blared through the fortress. The test of loyalty. A voice crackled over the intercom. Intruders. A rebellion force has infiltrated the lower chambers. Xyvera's face darkened. Foolish insects. Voss stormed into the room. They're after the armory. Orders. Xyvera didn't hesitate. Kill them all. Voss nodded and turned to Kai. You too. Kai clenched his fists. This was it. His test of loyalty. Kill the rebels, or betray the queen. Xyvera leaned in. Now, Kai, show me what kind of warrior you truly are. The fugitive's truth. The alarm screamed across the fortress. Red lights flashed, casting long, violent shadows across the steel corridors. The scent of smoke and blood filled the air. The rebels had come, not as whispers in the dark, not as rumors spread among prisoners, but as an unstoppable force. And now, Kai stood at a crossroads. Queen Xyvera watched him, her golden eyes burning with expectation. General Voss stood beside her, his massive cybernetic arms twitching with anticipation. Warriors gathered behind them, eager to charge into battle, to prove their loyalty. Kay's pulse thundered in his ears. Go, Xyvera ordered, her voice calm but firm. Kill them all. Kay didn't move. A second passed, then another. The silence felt heavier than the war erupting outside. Voss took a step forward, towering over Kai. "Do you hesitate again?" His voice rumbled, low and dangerous. Kai met his gaze. "No," he lied. "I'll handle it." Xyvera studied him for a long moment before smiling, satisfied. "Good." With a single nod, she dismissed him, turning back toward her throne as Voss and the others stormed off toward the chaos. Kai exhaled slowly, forcing his body to move. Each step felt heavier than the last. He wasn't walking toward a battle. He was walking toward a decision that would change everything. The hunt for Rin. The fortress was a war zone. Explosions rattled the steel walls. Fire roared from shattered control panels. Rebels and warriors clashed in brutal combat, their screams echoing through the halls. Kai moved fast, weaving through the carnage, his mind racing. He wasn't searching for the rebels. He was searching for Rin. He found him in the lower levels, wounded, cornered, but still fighting. Rin's blade slashed across a warrior's throat, blood spraying against the metal walls. He turned, his wild eyes locking onto Kai. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Rin grinned. "About time you showed up." Kai didn't smile. "You're outnumbered. You can't win this fight." Rin wiped sweat from his brow, smearing blood across his cheek. Wasn't planning on winning, just surviving. Kai's fingers tightened around his weapon. His orders were clear. Kill the rebels. Kill Rin. But deep inside, he knew this was no longer just about orders. "Tell me what you know," Kai demanded. Rin chuckled, shaking his head. "You're really going to make me explain everything while I'm bleeding out?" He winced, gripping his side where a deep wound leaked crimson. "Start talking." Rin sighed. "Fine. You already know Xyvera's past. You know she was made into this monster, but what you don't know." He took a shaky breath. "She's not just training warriors. She's training executioners." Kai's stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" Rin's expression darkened. "There's another war coming, Kai. Not just between warriors. Not between Zarvuk Prime and the rebels. A war beyond this planet." Kai frowned. "Explain." Rin leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Xyvera isn't just a queen. She's a weapon. The living, breathing weapon made to fight something bigger than all of us. The reason she trains us like this, the reason she pushes warriors beyond their limits, is because she's preparing an army, but not for her own rule. For an invasion." Kai's heart pounded. An invasion of what? Rin hesitated. Then he whispered two words that sent a chill down Kai's spine. The Architects. Kai had heard the name before, a distant legend. A story warriors told in hushed voices. The Architects, ancient beings that had shaped entire galaxies, erased civilizations like sand in the wind. Gods of war and destruction. "They're coming back," Rin said. "And Tyra. She's been preparing for them this entire time. Training us to be monsters. Because monsters are the only things that can fight them." Kai's chest tightened. It made sense. Too much sense. The brutal training. The endless slaughter. The way Xyvera smiled at death. Because she knew. She knew what was coming. Rin coughed, blood spilling onto his hand. "You can still walk away, Kai. You can turn me in. Take your place at Xyvera's side. Be her perfect warrior." His eyes locked onto Kai's. "Or you can help me stop her before it's too late." The choice slammed into Kai like a blade. Obey the queen. Kill Rin. Prepare for war. Or betray everything. Before Kai could answer, the wall behind them exploded. The queen's warning. Warriors flooded the room. Voss led them, his face twisted with fury. "Traitor." He roared, raising his cybernetic arm. A blast of energy fired directly at Rin. Kai moved before thinking. He grabbed Rin, twisted, and took the hit himself. Pain ripped through his shoulder, burning deep, but he kept moving. He pushed Rin toward the exit. "Run," Kai shouted. Rin didn't hesitate. He vanished into the smoke, disappearing through the wreckage. Kai turned to face Voss and the warriors. Voss's eyes blazed with betrayal. "You protected him," he growled. "Why?" Kai's vision blurred with pain, but his voice remained steady. "Because I'm done being a pawn." The warriors charged at him. Kai fought like a demon. His blade moved faster than thought, cutting through armor, dodging strikes. He wasn't fighting to kill, just to survive. But there were too many. He was losing. Then, a familiar voice cut through the chaos. "Stop." The warriors froze. Kai turned, breathing hard. Queen Xyvera stood at the entrance. She walked forward, her golden eyes unreadable, stepping past the bodies, past Voss, past the shattered remains of what Kai once believed. She stopped in front of him. Kai lifted his blade, but she didn't attack. She just watched him. "You made your choice," she murmured. Kai's grip tightened. "And you made yours." Xyvera exhaled, then smiled. A smile not of amusement, but of acknowledgement. "You remind me of someone I used to be," she whispered. Then she turned to her warriors. "Let him go." Voss stiffened. "But my queen." "Let him go." Silence. Then Voss took a step back. The warriors lowered their weapons. Kai didn't move. He didn't trust this. Xyvera met his gaze one last time. "Run, Kai," she said softly. "Run while you still have a choice." The betrayal game. The fortress was a graveyard of fire and steel. Smoke curled through shattered corridors. The scent of burned flesh and broken promises lingered in the air. Kai ran. His feet pounded against the cold metal floors, his wounded shoulder screaming with every step. He had escaped death, but at what cost? Xyvera had let him go. That thought burned more than the wound on his skin. Why? He had defied her, protected Rin, chosen betrayal over loyalty. Yet she had stood there, golden eyes calm, almost knowing. Her final words echoed in his mind. "Run, Kai. Run while you still have a choice." But the truth was, he had already made his choice. Now, there was no turning back. The escape and the hidden truth. Kai reached the outer corridors of the fortress, where the air was colder, thinner. He had almost made it to the underground tunnels, his only way out. Then, a shadow moved. A blade swung toward his throat. Kai reacted instantly, twisting away, catching his attacker's wrist. The metal edge barely missed his skin. He threw his attacker against the wall, pressing his own blade to their throat. A pair of dark eyes met his. "Rin." Kai exhaled sharply. "Are you trying to kill me?" Rin grinned, wincing. "Had to be sure it was really you. Thought maybe the queen had sent you back to finish the job." Kai didn't laugh. He pulled back. "We don't have time for this. We need to move. Now." Rin nodded, and they slipped into the abandoned tunnels beneath the fortress. It was dark. The only sound was the distant hum of energy cores above them. As they walked, Rin's voice broke the silence. "You realize she let you go, right?" Kai clenched his jaw. "I know." Rin shook his head. "And that doesn't make you wonder?" Of course it did. It made his skin crawl. Xyvera was many things. Ruthless, intelligent, powerful. But merciful? Never. And yet, she had stood before him, given him a choice, and then let him walk away. That meant she wasn't afraid of what he might do. That meant she still thought she could control him. Rin slowed his steps, glancing at Kai. His voice was quieter now. "She's planning something, Kai. Something bigger than we realize." Kai stopped walking. "You mean the architects?" Rin's expression darkened. "So you believe me now?" Kai's fingers tightened around his blade. "I don't know what to believe. But if Xyvera is training an army for war, we need to know what she's really planning." A heavy silence stretched between them. Then Rin said, "There's only one way to find out." Kai knew what he meant. Infiltration. Spying. going back into the lion's den. But was he ready for that? Before he could answer, a voice crackled in the darkness. You don't have a choice anymore. Kai and Rin spun around, weapons raised. From the shadows, figures emerge. Rebels. And leading them, a woman covered in scars, her eyes filled with fire. Commander Cirrus, the rebel proposition. Cirrus was a legend. She had fought against Xyvera for years, leading an underground rebellion that had barely survived the Queen's wrath. Now she stood before Kai and Rin, studying them like two stray wolves that had wandered into her pack. You caused quite a mess back there, she said, voice smooth but sharp. Kai didn't lower his blade. And who are you to judge? Cirrus smirked. The woman who just saved your life. She gestured behind them. You really thought Sarah just let you go? No, she let you run so she could watch where you went. Rin stiffened. You're saying we were followed? Cirrus nodded. Voss is already searching the outer tunnels. We don't have much time. Kai narrowed his eyes. Then why are you here? Why not just leave us to die? Cirrus took a step closer. Because you're valuable. You were trained by her, Kai. You know how she thinks. And yet, you walked away. That means one of two things. Either you're an idiot, or you're exactly what we need. Kai didn't flinch. And what do you need? Cirrus grinned. A way inside the fortress. A way to end Xyvera's reign for good. Rin shot Kai a look. This was the moment. The real test. Did they side with the rebels and take down the Queen? Or did they run? Kai's decision had already been made. He turned to Cirrus. I'll help you get inside. Cirrus's grin widened. Good. She nodded toward the others. Prepare them. We strike soon. Back into the fire. The next day, Kai stood at the edge of a massive underground chamber, staring at the plans the rebels had drawn. A map of the fortress. Key targets. Escape routes. Cirrus pointed to a specific area. Xyvera's personal chambers. That's where she keeps her private logs. We need them. Kai's stomach tightened. Her personal logs. It made sense. If Xyvera was hiding something. Asterisk, asterisk, if the war against the architects was bigger than anyone knew. Asterisk, asterisk, that was where the truth would be. But breaking into the Queen's lair. It was a death wish. Kai didn't hesitate. I'll do it. Rin stiffened. Kai, are you sure? I'm sure. Cirrus nodded approvingly. Good. Then we move at nightfall. Kai exhaled, staring down at the map again. He was going back. Back into the heart of the beast. This time, not as a warrior, not as a recruit, but as her enemy. The Queen's shadow. Deep inside the fortress, Queen Xyvera sat alone. She gazed at the holographic display in front of her, footage of Kai escaping, of him meeting the rebels, of him agreeing to betray her. She smiled. She had expected this. She turned as General Voss entered the room, his face twisted with anger. He's siding with the rebels, Voss growled. We should have killed him. Xyvera shook her head. No, Voss. This is better. Voss frowned. Better? How? Xyvera leaned forward, her golden eyes glowing. Because now, we know exactly where he'll be. War in the blood arena. The night was thick with silence. The fortress of Zarvok Prime loomed above the rebels, its walls carved from dark metal, pulsing with energy fields that shimmered under the twin moons. The wind howled across the barren wasteland surrounding it, carrying the scent of distant fires and old blood. Kai crouched in the shadows, his breath steady, his heartbeat a quiet drum in his chest. He had been here before, as a warrior, as a recruit, as one of Xyvera's chosen. Now, he was an intruder, a traitor, a dead man walking. Beside him, Rin shifted nervously. This is insane, he whispered, breaking into the Queen's personal chambers. We might as well walk in and ask her to kill us. Kai didn't respond. His eyes were locked on the fortress gates. They had a plan. Cirrus and the rebels would attack from the west, drawing out the bulk of Xyvera's forces. Kai and Rin would infiltrate the inner sanctum, breaking into the Queen's private archives. Once inside, they would steal the truth, the real reason Xyvera was preparing for war, the secret she kept buried beneath her empire of blood. Everything was set. All they needed to do was move. Kai exhaled slowly. Let's go. Infiltrating the beast's lair. They moved fast, shadows slipping through steel corridors. Every step was calculated, every movement precise. Kai knew these halls like the back of his hand. The blind spots of the security cameras, the silent doors that led to hidden passages, the ventilation shafts that bypassed the main halls. He had trained here, killed here, and yet something felt wrong. Too quiet, too easy. As they reached the lower levels, Rin whispered, "I don't like this." Kai agreed, but they had no choice. They approached the entrance to Xyvera's private chamber, a heavily reinforced vault, guarded by an eye-controlled defense system. Kai pulled a small device from his belt, plugging it into the terminal. The screen flickered. Access granted. Rin stared. That was fast. Kai's stomach twisted. Too fast. They stepped inside and walked straight into the Queen's trap. The throne of deception. The lights snapped on. A dozen heavily armed warriors surrounded them in an instant, weapons aimed at their heads. At the far end of the chamber, seated on her throne of steel and bone, was Queen Xyvera. She smiled. "I was wondering when you'd come back, Kai." Kai's pulse remained steady, but Rin stiffened beside him. "This was a trap," Rin muttered. Kai had already realized that. The rebels' attack, their perfect infiltration, the open security system. Xyvera had known all along. And now, they were surrounded. Voss stepped forward, his cybernetic fist clenching. "You were a fool to come back." Xyvera, however, seemed amused. "Not a fool," she murmured. "Just predictable." Her golden eyes locked onto Kai. "You want the truth, don't you?" She gestured toward a flickering holoscreen behind her. "Go ahead. Take a look." Kai hesitated. Was this another trick? Rin whispered, "Don't do it." But Kai had to know. He stepped forward, his fingers brushing against the screen. And the truth unfolded before his eyes. The architects and the war beyond. The holographic archive displayed recordings from years past. Not of Zarvok Prime, not of Xyvera's rise to power, but of something far worse. Kai saw entire planets burning, their surfaces reduced to molten wastelands. He saw ships the size of moons, descending upon worlds, consuming everything in their path. He saw warriors stronger than anything he had ever faced, beings of impossible power, the architects. The screen showed a final recording, an intercepted message, a transmission from a dying empire, warning the galaxy. The architects are returning. They will burn this universe as they did the last. There is only one way to stop them. Kai's blood ran cold. Xyvera leaned back in her throne. "Now you understand." Kai turned to face her. "You knew." She nodded. "I've always known." Rin shook his head. "You're lying. You just want power. You want control." Xyvera's expression didn't change. "Power is survival, child. Control is the only thing that stands between life and extinction." She stood slowly, her presence filling the room. "I don't build warriors for my own rule. I build them because this galaxy will not survive what's coming." Kai clenched his fists. "And you think turning people into monsters is the only way?" Xyvera stepped closer. "You've seen it, Kai. You felt it. When you killed in the arena, when you fought for your life, you understood. The weak die, the strong survive. And if we do not become strong enough, we will be nothing more than dust beneath their feet." A tense silence stretched between them. Then Xyvera's voice dropped to a whisper. "Fight with me." Kai's breath caught. I gave you a choice once, Xyvera continued. Now I give it to you again. Stand against me, and you will die. Her golden eyes pierced through him like fire. But stand beside me, and we will survive what's coming. Rin turned to Kai, shaking his head. Don't listen to her, Kai. We fight for something better than this. Kai's mind was a battlefield. Xyvera was right about one thing. Something was coming. Something far worse than her rule. But did that mean she was right about everything? Was she a tyrant, or the only one prepared for the war ahead? The choice was his. The arena of destiny. Before Kai could speak, an explosion shook the fortress. The rebels had broken through. The final battle had begun. Xyvera didn't even flinch. She stepped forward, golden eyes burning with a fire that could not be extinguished. You want war, Kai, she whispered. Her blade snapped from her belt, gleaming under the flickering lights. Then fight me. Right here. Right now. The final test. Kai drew his own weapon. If this was how it ended, then so be it. The war for Zarvok Prime had begun, and only one warrior would walk away alive. The queen falls, the warrior rises. The arena stood silent, its crimson sand still soaked in the blood of fallen warriors. The battle outside raged on. Explosions shook the fortress. Screams of dying rebels and soldiers echoed through the corridors. But here, in the heart of Zarvok Prime, there was only one fight left to be won. Kai stood across from Queen Xyvera, his blade gripped tight in his fist. This was it. The final duel. Her golden eyes burned like molten fire, her expression unreadable. She did not hesitate. She did not question. She simply raised her blade. No more words, Kai. Kai exhaled, steadying his stance. I never wanted this. Xyvera smiled. A dangerous, almost sorrowful thing. Neither did I. Then she struck. The duel of titans. Xyvera was fast. Faster than any warrior Kai had ever faced. Her blade came down in a deadly arc, so fast it blurred through the air. Kai barely managed to block in time, the impact rattling his bones. She pressed forward, a storm of steel and fury. Her movements were precise, refined by years of slaughter and survival. Every strike aimed to kill. Kai dodged left, rolling under a vicious slash. He spun, countering with a thrust aimed at her ribs. But Xyvera was already moving. She twisted, parrying his attack, then slammed her knee into his gut. Pain exploded through his body. He staggered back, gasping, but there was no time to recover. Xyvera launched herself at him again, her blade singing through the air. Kai barely managed to deflect it, his arms aching with the force of her blows. She was stronger, more experienced, ruthless. And yet, Kai wasn't fighting to win. He was fighting to prove her wrong. The battlefield beyond the duel. Outside the arena, the rebellion was falling apart. Voss and his warriors cut through rebel forces like wildfire, their brute strength overwhelming the scattered resistance. The fortress defenses were holding. The rebels had thought this was the final strike, the moment they would bring down the queen. But Xyvera had planned for this. She always planned for everything. In the chaos, Rin fought with everything he had. He saw rebel after rebel cut down, the ground littered with the bodies of those who had fought for something better. And he knew, if Kai lost, it was over. The rebellion would die here. Xyvera would win. And soon, the architects would come. Rin's heart pounded. They had to hold out. They had to buy Kai time. Kai's last stand. Xyvera's blades sliced across Kai's shoulder, cutting deep. He gasped, pain blooming through his body. Blood dripped onto the sand. Xyvera did not stop. She pressed forward, relentless, her strikes so precise they were almost beautiful in their brutality. You're holding back, she hissed, driving him back. That's why you'll lose. Kai gritted his teeth, muscles burning. She was right. He wasn't fighting like her. He wasn't fighting to kill. But he didn't need to. Because he understood something she didn't. You think survival is everything, Kai panted, dodging another strike. You think strength is the only way. Xyvera's eyes narrowed. Kai shifted his stance. He stopped playing defense and attacked. He moved faster than before, weaving around her strikes instead of blocking them, his blade flashing like silver lightning. Xyvera countered, but for the first time, she hesitated. For the first time, she miscalculated. Kai wasn't fighting like a warrior trained in her arena. He was fighting like something new, something different. And then, he struck deep. His blade slid into her side, piercing through armor, through flesh. Xyvera gasped, golden eyes wide with shock. Blood spilled onto the sand. The Queen of Zarvok Prime, the undefeated, the unbreakable, staggered. Kai stepped back, chest rising and falling. He had won. But Xyvera, she laughed. Not out of anger, not out of madness, but out of understanding. The fall of the Queen. She sank to one knee, staring at the blood on her hands. You're different, she murmured, her voice quieter now. Kai's grip tightened on his blade. It's over. Tire. She smiled, not in defiance, but in peace. You proved me wrong, she whispered. You're not a monster. You're something else. She looked up at him, golden eyes softening. That's why you'll win the war I never could. Kai frowned. What are you talking about? Xyvera exhaled slowly. I always knew I wouldn't be the one to stop them, she said. I thought I could forge an army. Turn warriors into something strong enough to stand against the architects. She looked around. The burning fortress, the fallen warriors, the chaos. I was wrong. Her gaze met Kai's one last time. But maybe you can do what I couldn't. Then she collapsed. The Queen of Zarvok Prime, the warrior who had built an empire from blood and steel, was gone. The rise of a new era. The rebels stormed the arena, Rin leading them. Kai stood over Xyvera's body, his chest rising and falling. Cirrus rushed forward, eyes scanning the battlefield. It's over, she breathed. But Kai shook his head. No. The war against Xyvera had ended, but the war against the architects had just begun. Kai turned toward the throne, the seat of power, the place where Xyvera had ruled with an iron fist. And then, he turned away. He did not take the throne. Instead, he looked at the warriors, the rebels, the survivors. We're not fighting for power anymore, he said, his voice firm. We're fighting for something bigger. He turned to Cirrus, to Rin, to the soldiers who had once fought for Xyvera. The architects are coming, Kai said. We either stand together, or we fall like the rest. No one argued. No one spoke. Because they all knew the truth. This was just the beginning. And as the sky above them rumbled with the distant echoes of something far greater than any of them, the real war was about to begin.